Hello and welcome to Points in the Podcast. I am Elias Schuster, and as always, I am joined by Matt Rooney. We sit here today, December 21st, 4 days before Christmas, and we already have an early present. We got an early Christmas gift. The Chicago Bulls are 7-3 in their last 10 games. I
We're
feel
both
like
smiling to start a podcast.
I
Never, if you're
know.
watching the win is if you're watching the stream on YouTube this is the first time I think we've ever both been like Eli's in an upbeat tone introducing the podcast. I have a smile on my face as opposed to a deadpan look of disappointment. The
It,
Chicago Bulls are fun. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like my stocking's stuffed. I feel like I have a nice cup of warm hot chocolate, which I did drink. Actually, I drank one
Mm.
last night watching the game. The vibes were strong, just like they were on and off the court for the Bulls. It was. I've been very shocked that the fact that this has even continued for 10 games, that we've seen this much competence from the team, that we've seen this drastic of a 180, which I want to get into on today's show, like how much has changed, why we think it's changed this much. Um, it's all been pretty encouraging. I've been pleasantly surprised, and I'm hesitant about whether or not this is something that will not only continue but means anything significant in the long run. But for now, on again December 21st, with a long season to go, I'm just going to enjoy what's happening. I'm just going to enjoy myself, enjoy the holiday season. The Bulls have been fun, like you said. That's been the biggest thing, right, Matt? This is somehow this is a fun team.
I, I keep waiting for this to I think even said it in pregame yesterday. Like I'm still kind of waiting for at some point this to slow down and I don't think they're going to win 70% of the rest of their games. Like that's unrealistic to think about. But when in terms of what this means, probably not much for this year. But what this means is there actually is a young core to build around. This isn't lottery tickets anymore. Like I'm convinced now. Like this 10-game sample size and what we've seen from Coby White. I'm convinced he's more than just a nice young piece. He's a legitimate building block piece. Is he going to be your best player on a championship team? No, probably
No,
not.
yeah,
But is he a
but he's a
starter on a
guy. He's a
Can he be
dude.
a starter on a championship team? This Coby White can be a starting point guard on a championship team. Absolutely. Was Patrick Williams? We were wondering, is he even going to be here next year? What kind of money?
He'll
Still
be here.
interested in what kind of money he wants, but the way he's playing now, this is the guy it only took 4 years, but this is kind of the guy we thought we were getting. He can shoot from three. He's getting more aggressive on both ends. He's playing really good defense. We
The
talked about it
defense is
all year.
outstanding. Yeah,
We've talked about it since the preseason. All we want him to do is attack the boards offensively and defensively. Like that's a way you can impact the box score. He's doing that now. I don't know why it took Zach LaVine not being in the lineup for him to want to rebound that, but we can again build on that stuff later. Like Ayo Dosunmu is looking like a pretty valuable reserve guard on a good again, never really going to be a starter on a team that's winning a title, but is he going to be a guy that on a playoff team you like having come off your bench, a big guard who can play defense, who has some skill, who can hit a three-pointer? Yeah, absolutely. So there's building blocks here. There's pieces.
yeah. I think that's like you said. And that I hope is the way the front office is looking at it, and I think fans should be looking at it right now. Is even if this season ultimately doesn't turn into anything, even if which we've said many times on the show, they likely shouldn't re-sign DeMar DeRozan. They that's probably not a path they should go down. And even if that's not what they do, they don't invest more in this win now mentality. That's okay, because you have a 23-year-old Coby White who's looking like one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's top 3 and made threes this year. You have a guy like Patrick Williams who's now, averaging over these 10 games or so about 14 points per game, 5 rebounds, a couple assists. He's shooting above 40% from 3, like you said. And then the defense is, among some of the best from that position in the NBA, if you really look at the advanced stats. And yeah,
I rely on you for those.
Yeah. Ayo Dosunmu, and like you said, looking like a very solid, more like that rookie year Ayo that we saw, which
Yes,
he's even more polished now. But rookie year Ayo was like, oh my god, this dude looks like for sure a rotation guard that you want on your team who does it on both ends. And we're seeing not only him return to that, but then add on to what he can do with a little more action in the half court. He's hitting his spot up threes again, but I like what he's doing as more of an off-ball mover, which is something he really struggled with. So there's a lot to be encouraged with over this stretch. And to get into it, we saw a lot of that last night. And I kind of want to first start with talking about the win they just had over the Lakers. First, they beat Philadelphia, the 76ers, who won 6 straight. coming into that game. They had the number 2 offense coming into that game, and the Bulls end up playing a great game, it was a close 108-104 victory, but they executed on both ends of the floor down the stretch. And that was an encouraging victory. Then you come over to play the Lakers back at the United Center, and 8 players score in double figures. You had them. The biggest thing for me that I was so encouraged with in both of these games, but we really saw it last night, is this ability to kind of just fend off runs now as well. I mean, we're seeing, I think, consistency, right, or I should say inconsistency was always the word around this team. And even Billy Donovan would use it. Even the front office would use it. Oh, we need to be more consistent. We need to be more consistent. And it was just so frustrating to hear that 3 years into whatever this core was, about them talking about how they can't put 48 minutes together, how, they'll play great one half and then they'll crumble in the second half. And anytime adversity struck with this group, we usually just saw them fall flat on their face. We usually saw them not be able to fend off the runs. But we've seen that now over 2 games. And last night we saw, the Lakers go, I think it was on like a 21-5 run to really just eliminate the Bulls' double-digit lead and get right back into the game. And the old Bulls from a month ago, they lose that game. They let that one get out of hand, and then the Lakers probably win by 12 or something. But this Bulls team, while obviously it's not ideal that the Lakers went on a 25 or 21-5 run, but at the same time, that stuff just happens.
That's the NBA. It happens in every game.
Yeah.
Every NBA game, every team goes on a run. And the Bulls, not even just at the beginning of this year, the last couple of years, it was just like once that run started to happen, it was like quicksand and they just couldn't get out of it, and they would end up losing by, 5, sometimes 10 points. They're starting to they're starting to learn how to put ends to those runs and how to not let that derail it from where they want to do. They're learning how to stop the bleeding. They're learning, I mean, how many times in the past have there been, wide open threes from the corner or something from Io or somebody that, if it goes in, the run stopped and it's back to an 8-point lead and it clanks and then the other team gets the rebound, runs, and it's cut to 3. Like, they're starting to hit those shots again. And not
Right.
again, I'm saying they're starting to hit those shots. Like, they're
Yeah.
learning how to fight through adversity and put an end to those runs. And I think it's like, I think partially it's starting to realize that, those things are going to happen in just about every NBA game. It's very rare that you're going to open up a 15-point lead in the first half and not have that game get close again, just because that's the game. And
Yeah.
these guys are learning how to win those games and how to stop those runs and how to put an end to things instead of letting things slip away.
But you talk about hitting those shots, like, why, I think what you have to take a step back even more and say, why are they hitting those shots now? Is some of it just the fact that they're shooting better? Yeah. I mean, they shot really poorly to begin the year. It was a little
The
uncharacteristic.
ball is moving again.
But that's what it is, right? Because even though the beginning of the season, they were shooting under the marks that they normally should, because even last year, even though as bad as the offense was, they were efficient shooting the basketball. So we knew that eventually this year they would likely hit more shots. Especially DeMar, he was going to creep back up. Vooch is still having kind of a rough year around the rim, but some of these guys were going to shoot better. So that's part of it. That's happening. But the main reason, right, and you just said it, is the reason they're hitting these shots to end runs and sticking with it is because they're sticking with this ball movement. They're sticking with this new offensive identity that they talked about during the offseason. And now we're finally seeing more than a quarter of the way into the year, where we're seeing with, funny enough, Zach LaVine off the floor, this team finally play up tempo. They're moving in the half court a lot. We're seeing a lot more cutting, a lot more action, and just the effort to initiate the offense quicker and try to find the unselfishness also, I should say, to find open teammates and really trust each other. Because that's a big word too that I've thrown out at bleachernation.com, where you can read our work, is just this idea of trust, which I think wasn't there on the court a lot of the times. Was, it was either, okay, DeMar Levine's got to score. And now we're seeing, and I think DeMar, we can talk about this later, has been a big proponent of this, but this team is believing anyone can make the shot as long as we find the right shot. It's not about who's shooting it at this point. It's about, how are we going to get the best shot on the floor? And that was something that I think was reversed last year and at the beginning of this year. It was more about, how do we get these guys the shot, not how do we get the best shot? And so that's been a huge difference over these past couple of games. And again, especially last night, because that's why you see 8 players score in double figures against Los Angeles. And that's why you saw 5 players hit 3 or more threes from downtown. So the Bulls finished last night with an 18 to 34 performance from behind the arc. Those 18 made threes were the most this season, comfortably. They had 25 assists. It was just an energetic and offense that was all driven by being unselfish, moving the ball. And it's been just surprising how much of a 180 that is. And I still can't wrap my head around why. I know the easy thing, right, is to say Zach LaVine's not on the floor. And I understand that has to be talked about. There's definitely a part of that is important to say, or to get into. But at the same time, it's like that can't just be it. It's shocking to me that we've seen this
Well, we're
drastic
gonna
of a
learn.
180.
We're gonna learn at some point because he's there. I don't think we've seen the last of him in a Bulls uniform because I think it, unless he wants it to be the last of him in a Bulls uniform, it would be dumb for the Bulls to not let him back on the court and give him a chance to build some value up again.
Because
Now,
this
is that
stretch ain't
possible?
helping.
Yeah, is that possible? Sure, but like we'll learn just about like just how much that does factor in. Like, is this team really just that much better without Zach? Is it when Zach was on the floor and him and DeMar were going back and forth, it didn't give the other guys a chance to develop? And now they've had that chance to develop. Like when Zach comes back, it'll be more of a functional unit and less reliant on
Yeah,
those two.
there's way more
That's what
confidence. Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping this is going to turn into. And I'm not saying I think it's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen if and when Zach comes back. But that's kind of what like I'm hoping we see is that like these guys learn, like these guys have had their chance to develop in this 10-game period, whatever it's been. They've had a chance to grow. They've had a chance to take their lumps. They've had a chance to be the ones taking the big shots, being reliant on to hit the big shots and stop runs and all that. Now, when you insert Zach back, do we still have that confidence? Do we still have that whatever we want to talk about it or whatever we want to call it to keep doing what we're doing and not just revert back to, okay, it's Zach and DeMar's team again? Because in Zach's absence, DeMar, I think you wrote about it yesterday. DeMar and Vooch have done a really nice job of like, not all the time. I mean, DeMar's still getting his and he's still scoring and he's still, we talked about the Philly game. He got a little ISO bally at the end there, which I didn't love, but like that's going to happen. Like DeMar and Vooch are still getting theirs, but they're also now like deferring a lot more and they're more willing to run the offense and, spread everything out, not just insistent on everything running through them. They're a lot more willing to play team ball. Is Zach going to be willing to do that when he gets back? Because if he is, Zach's going to fit like perfectly into what this team wants to do for however
right.
much longer he's here. But if not, it's going to get back to frustrating very quickly.
Yeah, it's hard because I think with Zach, the problem for me has never necessarily been that I've never necessarily found LaVine to be a selfish player. I think that I think a lot, and I think he gets that rap sometimes from people, like, oh, he's,
Mm-hmm.
he's a ball hog in a sense, whatever. Like and also there's this idea of him being this high volume shooter, which he's not. He's been very efficient on his career. He scores his points on a pretty low field
Yeah.
goal attempts if you go look. So my problem with him has never been um, a selfishness aspect. It's just more been that decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what this team is really thriving on right now is the quick decisions, is the trusting of each other, and just getting the offense going quickly. And I think that's where LaVine sometimes has lagged behind is, making the right decision. And while yes, athletically and athletically, this type of style of play should draw out his strengths. There's no doubt. I think Billy Donovan even talked about this after the game, and we've talked about it on this show, and I've written about it at Bleacher Nation.
Mm-hmm.
Like theoretically, the way this team is playing right now is how they wanted to play with LaVine, is how they wanted to get the most out of LaVine because he's the best in transition. He's one of the best off-ball scorers in the NBA. The advanced stats for that for him is fantastic. He's a great catch and shoot threat. He's also someone who can shoot on the move. As a cutter, he's an extremely explosive athlete. As a lob threat, he's there. Like all of this stuff for Zach should fit into how they're playing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, the question is just will it? Because I think there's a lot of this has been mental for the team, and maybe, as you mentioned, now that the young players have had their chance to kind of to fill their confidence bucket up over this over however long Zach's out, and see, oh, like we can positively impact this group, if as long as we have this initiative to do so.
Yeah.
And maybe even on the other end of the spectrum, Levine's sitting on the bench seeing, look at what Coby's doing. Look at what Patrick's doing, even look at what Io's doing. Like, how do I come in and fit into this? So I think the hope would be that he's also viewing it that way. But when he comes, the team also stops with this deferring to him and DeMar and understands, like, no, we now see that we can string together a 7-3 stretch without him. And so it's still important for us to play the way that we're playing right now. And honestly, even though Levine is who he is, the 2-time All-Star, the max player, whatever, we have to kind of force Zach now to play to play the way we're playing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that there's definitely a possibility that or he should fit into what they're doing. The question I just think is, can his decision making reach the level that this team's playing at right now? And two, will mentally the team stay strong to continue to push this identity forward, even if he does come in and is struggling a bit right off the bat. I think that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, your decision making comment, I think that's an interesting one too, because Zach often didn't make the right decisions, but him and DeMar seemed like when they were running the offense, the only ones kind of willing to make decisions, and it seemed like everybody else was hesitant to make decisions that wasn't involving those two. And this stretch has given those guys that chance to be those decision makers. And are they making right ones? Most of the time, yeah, but they're making wrong ones too, and they're learning on the fly. So yeah, when he comes back, he's not the only decision maker anymore.
Right.
And
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, I'm interested to see, do they defer to him? Do they say, is it more of a, hey, you're coming back into our thing, or is it same old, we're going back to Zach
Well,
Moore?
especially those last few games, I would say
Yeah.
before he exited and, or before they announced the injury and he was out, like his scoring was down and you could tell Zach was, which I give him, some props for, is
Mhm.
he was clearly trying to play this role of facilitator more and trying to play this. And some people were saying like, oh, he's just tanking so he could get traded or whatever. I think it was honestly more, he was trying to play to this identity and play as more of a facilitator and get other guys going. But it wasn't because of his decision making not being the best, and also he is the best when he's scoring the basketball. It was weird. It just wasn't working. It was kind of slogging the offense even more. So like you just said, he can't. There's sometimes was this feel like either Levine and DeRozan just both need to be getting buckets, or if anyone's facilitating, it's got to be Levine or DeRozan.
Yeah.
And I think what this stretch has hopefully shown everybody is no, everyone can be involved in that process. And not only can they be, they need to be for this team to function at, at a high level in any capacity. So the Bulls, like, the whole conversation about are the Bulls better without Zach LaVine is just such a can of worms, because
we'll learn when he comes back, because I don't think we were given we didn't really know, because those guys didn't really have the chance to develop. And I think, granted, it's been a sped up development process, but we've seen that they kind of are developed and what they can be. Like, we'll actually learn that question if and when Zach LaVine comes back for a 5 to 10 game stretch. Like,
and
then we'll actually know.
Sometimes, like I said, on paper, no, they shouldn't be. But sometimes that just is how it is. And
they don't play the games on paper, Eli.
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes it just is what it is. And I wrote this the other day at Bleacher Nation. Like, I think sometimes a guy just runs his course, right? Not only in a locker room, but for a team and for an organization. I think
That's
Zach
okay.
knows that he's reached that point with the Bulls. It seems like the Bulls know, and they've known for a little while now, which that's a whole other thing, because why did you give him the extension? Why, whatever. But it seems like they've
Well, you couldn't
known.
let him walk for nothing.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just I think they understand that there's both of them, which that's all been all the reporting, that this thing's coming to an end, and sometimes that's just okay. So even though it's frustrating to see them play this way, and to an extent, because it's like, Zach, this is exactly the way that someone like Zach LaVine should be playing. Sometimes it just makes sense for him to go do that elsewhere, and a change of scenery is sometimes just so important. We saw it with someone like Lauri Markkanen. We to some extent we saw it with someone like Wendell Carter Jr. Like, there sometimes guys just need to go somewhere else, and it's unfortunate that that's the case when they're as talented as someone like LaVine. But that's the flip that needs to be switched in their brain mentally, and the flip that just needs to be switched for the organization. So I still think at the end of the day that's where this is all heading. But I would agree with you, the chance of him having played his last game in a Bulls uniform is slim, and he likely comes back and hopefully just fits into this thing to boost that trade value up.
So we got a question in the comments here, which is new for us. We don't often get those, but coming from Twitter, Sam is asking about Zach trade talks, and obviously we've had, I feel like, a million posts on that because there's a new rumor seemingly every day.
Yeah.
But what as of right now, what do you think the return's looking like? Because I mean, we keep seeing again the whole Lakers thing with like Rui and D'Angelo Russell and a pick. Like, is that actually a thing? Like, I think with where his stock is, like, I don't like. Is that all that's on the market right now? And what's it going to take to kind of bump that stock up?
Yeah, well, I think I always preface every Levine trade conversation with the fact that it's still very early. And with that said, how we enter trade season, we're very close because that post December 15th and end of December,
Hmm.
this is now when those conversations start really heating up, and especially as we get into January and the new year. So there's still a lot of time for things to develop. There's a lot of time for an injury to happen for some organization, and that organization to say, we need someone like Zach LaVine. There's a lot of time for someone just to say, hey, we're in a good spot right now, and we need someone like Zach LaVine. So I think there's more teams that can be thrown into the equation. Having said that, the Lakers are the only team we've heard about up until this point. Yes, there's been droppings.
Why are the Lakers? Everybody, the Bulls are just going to trade their whole team to the Lakers. Apparently, DeMar's going there, Zach's going there,
Yeah,
Caruso's going there.
yeah. Well, Jovan Buha over at The Athletic, right? He reported this several weeks ago, and he reiterated it yesterday in a piece at The Athletic that they still prefer DeRozan or Caruso. That makes sense because they're cheaper, and that's the Lakers. It's not like they're overflowing with assets. But I still think in terms of a Levine trade market, they're the number one franchise in the running for him at the moment. And
yeah, and you talked about it before too. Zach makes so much sense for them in terms of a long-term plan as well, because the Lakers are never going to want to be a team that is tanking basement dwellers. And when LeBron inevitably hangs it up in maybe a year or two, you kind of ease that blow with a tandem of Zach and AD, and
yeah,
now an actually decent roster they've built around as well.
right. And so going back to the question though of just, the idea of distressed asset swap and
Hmm.
junk salary filler and the 29 first, I'm assuming that's kind of about the Lakers because they're the ones with the 29 first.
Yeah.
I think, can the Bulls get a better offer? I still think it's possible it's out there than what the Lakers can get. But if you have to settle on something, which I'm just looking at the comment, which is why
Yeah.
that 29 first is that. Yeah. So I think if you look at what LA can offer, right, the deal is likely going to come down to D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, that 29 first round pick. Like that's going to be the meat of the deal. And it's not a sexy it's not a sexy return by any means. I think the Bulls are going to ask for Austin Rivers. They're probably going to push for
Reeves.
that. And yeah,
I just want nothing to do with Austin Rivers.
Yeah,
No offense.
Austin Rivers, fun fact, worked out for a bunch of teams the other day. So he's trying to get back in. But Austin
Rivers,
Reeves,
you are
yeah,
a Chicago Bull.
they're probably going to ask for Austin Reeves. Whether or not all signs have pointed toward, and all reporting that the Lakers do not want to do that, which obviously makes sense.
You might have to include Caruso for that to happen.
Yeah, but what I think is if the market does get contentious in any way, that is the Lakers' trump card of sorts. They can say, fine, here, we'll give you Austin Reeves as well as the first round pick and stuff. So I think the deal, it's easy to form a deal with LA, like we said, because of the salaries. Now, again, that has to wait till January 15th because that's when all of their assets become available to be traded.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have a couple of weeks here before.
I don't think he's not getting moved before then. They'd be I think dumb to move him before then because then they're not exploring all their options.
Right, unless someone really comes in with like a wow
blows him away
because they want to get in there before
mm-hmm.
the LA can bring in their offer. So I don't like LA's deal. Let me make that clear. It's not my favorite by any means.
It's just the only one out there right now.
It's just the only one. I'm hoping the Bulls, I'm hoping some other teams come into the play to either make the LA have to go up to that Reeves level or have to somehow get a third team involved and the Bulls are getting more picks or whatever it may be. But yeah, if you're getting back D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura, who also are long-term salary technically, because Russell has a player option next year for $18 million. My guess is he's going to pick that up. Rui Hachimura, he's on a 3 or 4 year deal, whatever it is. He's not necessarily cheap right now. I don't like the idea of just getting a pick to take back that salary. So that stuff worries me, and I'll definitely have an eye on the Lakers. We got another comment saying
here. We got first off, Zach ignored after Zach ignored PR, the Bulls went 0-5. We always believe in talking to the media, Alyssa. So we're big
Yes,
pro
we're
talk to the
all,
media.
yeah.
Be nice to
You,
Bulls
you
personnel.
get that to $215 million. We talked about that on the show.
It's not hard. Just
Talk to the media. Yeah,
just walk off. Don't shove anybody.
yeah, or do that. Yeah.
ASH Sports Talk. Good question here. How do you guys feel about a Coby White Jamal Murray comparison? Do you see
So
that? You would be
yeah,
able to break that down better than I would. I'm an eye test guy. That's about all I got. You might be able to dive
I
into
think
the.
I've made this. Not saying that he's saying this because I said it, but I think I've made this comparison before.
I knew
Not
that, obviously.
I think I've made the comparison probably at Bleacher Nation. I'd have to go look it up, but I have thought about this at least for sure. And I don't think Jamal is Jamal Murray's an interesting player just because of the fact that his regular season stats do not coincide at all with his postseason stuff. You see a lot of players obviously where it's the opposite. Look at someone like DeMar. Or even James Harden. Like there's these guys that get into the postseason that just can't make it work. Jamal's like the opposite. He's solid in the offseason. He's never been an all-star. Let's remember that. And he gets into the postseason and he's a postseason all-star. He's absolutely incredible. So in terms of the way they play, though, yeah, there's obviously a lot of similarities between Jamal Murray and Coby White. Now, do I think Coby reaches Jamal Murray's level of being a championship level point guard? Probably not. And one of the two best players on a championship team. No, I don't think Coby's going to reach that level, but they're both smaller guards.
That'd be great.
Yeah, they're both smaller. They're both quick, or I shouldn't say smaller. They actually have decent size. Coby's like 6'5", but stout is the word I want to use, right? Because the way that Jamal Murray plays is strong. And not only is he a great knockdown shooter, but he's just he kind of can bully you. He's got some meat on the bones, and I think that's what we're seeing more from Coby now is his ability to kind of finish through contact and invite contact. And I'd say Jamal's a little bit more of a finesse player, he has a little more finesse to his game, I should say, because being a finesse player and being strong and bullying guys are different things. But Jamal's got a little more finesse to his game than Coby currently. But Coby's improving the ball handling and he's getting a little bit better. So I don't think it's not a crazy comp. It's just I don't think Coby's going to reach that level necessarily. But he's certainly playing it like it right now. That's for sure. He's playing at a similar level.
I hope we get, and it's wildly not even out of the question at this point, because the Bulls are only a game out of the play-in spot with obviously a lot of basketball left to play, and they play at this. Again, I don't think they're winning 70% of their games for the rest of the year. But if they play like this the rest of the year, they're going to find themselves in the play-in. I really want to see this version of the team, like see Coby White, see Patrick Williams, see Io in a playoff atmosphere where they're kind of the guys, where it's not, last year we obviously saw them in the play-in, but it was Zach and DeMar. I mean, Coby had a nice game against the Heat and then got weirdly taken out with like 3 minutes left and they didn't score again. But like, I would like to see them get that chance to kind of run the show.
Well, that's a game too where
guys.
If you lose in the play-in, like the Bulls did last year, I don't care if it's Coby and Pat leading the way. Like if you lose, it's like I don't care if you lost because it's those two leading the way. When you lose
that's
because Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, that's embarrassing. When you lose because Coby White and Patrick Williams were, your primary guys, that's encouraging because they helped get you to that point anyway, and they got that experience. So I agree. I mean, if they get to the play-in this year and it's because of those guys playing strong and the young guys, like great. I just hope that's not what this front office prioritizes necessarily. Like
exactly.
Again,
don't make trades to get yourself to that point. But if those
Right.
guys lead you there, that's a very successful season.
Exactly. Two different things. Like it's a very different season. Like you just said, if they just get you there versus if you're trading LaVine for, if you do trade LaVine for D'Lo and Rui Hachimura, and then those two also help you get there. Like that's not, that's not the initiative you should be taking. Okay,
unless
a couple
that's
more
literally
things.
The only thing you can get back, which might unfortunately be possible.
Yeah, it's possible right now that maybe
at that point, do you just be like, "Hey, Zach, do us a favor, like just stick around to the offseason. Let's just
honestly
let's run through this for the year. Let's revisit this in the offseason because." And I almost just said that jokingly, but like it makes sense to at least talk about it with him because. Like, hey, like we'll try and get you to LA. We'll do our best. We know that's where you want to be, but like this offer does nothing for us right now. And if you get him back for, a 10-day stretch where he's playing some pretty good basketball, you could pretty much convince him like, hey, like we got what it takes to get ourselves to the playoffs here. Maybe like go on a nice little run and like you're going to look really good because of it. But like it just doesn't work for either side right now to move you, or especially doesn't work for our side.
That obviously very different players. We saw this with Kevin Durant. We saw this, we saw this with him where it's like dude, we're not going to trade you right now. Come back and, like play well. And then we'll be able to get
Yeah.
you to where you want to go. And at the end of the day, for Levine, it's probably better right now for him to also to come back and play
Yeah.
strong. And
If you play a good second half of the season, everybody's going to want you. And as long as the deals are somewhat equal, you're gone. We'll send you where you want to
yeah,
go. Like you got to, but you got to play ball with us. And like, I don't know, Zach has been a he's been a good trooper through all this. He's been a good teammate through all of this. Obviously wants to be elsewhere, but he hasn't cried about it. He said all the right things in the media. Obviously the PR incident was kind of a weird one, but like
that's
everything
the
else,
only hiccup. That's the only hiccup
he's
so far.
gone about this like the right way throughout the entire time. And like he's played hard. Like you said, he was almost trying to adapt his style to play more to what the team wanted to be. Like if he comes back and fits in for a bit, but the offers still aren't there in mid-January, it probably does make sense to be like, hey, let's figure this out in the off season because that's when all these big deals get made anyways, and that's going to help everybody. That's going to help both parties.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and we could talk about it more on shows to come because, like we said, there's
Yeah.
the chance of a trade happening as soon is very unlikely. And so this idea that he sticks around until the offseason is not crazy, especially with the team performing better, and especially if he really cares about where he goes, which maybe he doesn't, and he just wants to get out of there. But if he really cares about where he wants to go, there's a very real possibility that he understands and his agency understands. Go back, play well. And then in the offseason, we're going to revisit this. And
Yeah.
you're going to have a higher likelihood of having one, more suitors, but two, and not only would he have more suitors because he played better, but the money's less you're taking on for the future.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, and that's a big part of it as well. You're not taking him over mid-season. You get to start fresh and his life gets to change at a more natural time in the year instead of just being booted somewhere in the middle of the year. So there's a lot of possibilities where that happens. But hey, there's still a lot of possibilities that the trade just happens mid-season and they get it over with. Okay, so what I wanted to get back on track here a little bit, which is the talking about how different this team has been. There's a few things I wanted to point out. I think we've talked a lot about tempo. We've talked a lot about playing faster pace and all this stuff with this team, and that's why they've looked completely different than they have over these last 10 games than they did for the first month or so of the season. But I think a funny thing that I want to kind of point out to people is that their pace, which is basically how many possessions you're getting per game, and the stats called pace, and in a way, yes, it's about the pace of play, and their pace ranked dead last in the league up until November 28th. So it was slow. Over the last 10 games, it's ranked 29th. So the funny thing is, it's not like this team has all of a sudden really ramped up in terms of how much they're playing in transition and, how many fast break opportunities they're getting and early shot clock shots and all this stuff. And we talked about this. I think we talked about it on the show, but I definitely wrote about it during the preseason on Bleacher Nation. Was playing fast doesn't necessarily mean doing those things. Doesn't mean shooting early in the shot clock and just getting downhill. What it means is being decisive with the basketball, making quick decisions, initiating offensive action faster, and that is what we're seeing this team do. And the signs of that are improvements in assist ratio, right, and just assist percentage. So dead last in the league in assist percentage up until November 28th. Over this 10-game stretch, they've moved to 15th. So that's an area where you're seeing a lot more shots. Yeah, the league average, you're creating far more offense for your teammates. Another area where they've made significant strides is they're now number one in passes made per game, which is kind of a weird stat, but it's meaningful in this sense. Number one in passes made per game over this 10-game stretch. So that really emphasizes the amount of just ball movement, right? It's not only are we looking for assist opportunities, but we're just trying to keep this defense in motion. We're just trying to get because the more the defense is moving, the more you can find holes in that defense, the more you can potentially get a defensive breakdown. So this concept of them playing fast, I don't necessarily want, are playing more up tempo. I don't necessarily want people to,
doesn't mean they're just running the floor the whole game.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're just running people off the floor.
It means the ball is moving fast.
Yeah, it just means
that the ball's not stopping at the top of the key with second ball.
Right, the decision making is way fast, and we goes back to when we talk about Levine not being the best decision maker at times this year and things like that. It's just that everything they're doing is more decisive and it's quicker, and there's far less thinking in a lot of ways. It's more just instincts and reacting to what you're getting. And with that said, there's other areas that have drastically improved as well. So the full article keep shouting out. Go to bleachernation.com. It said the Chicago Bulls are playing like a completely different team, similar name to this podcast. And I pointed out a couple more stats that you can go take a look at. I'll give you a few here, but this was before the Laker game, but they're going to be very similar to even if you check today, because again they won the Laker game very similarly. So all the rankings are going to be pretty close. So before November 28th, right? Effective field goal percentage, 28th in the NBA. They've moved into a more acceptable 22nd. So that's not a huge jump, but it's been better. The assist percentage, like we already said, that went from 30th to 13th in the league. So that was a big jump. And your offensive rebounding percentage, that was at 21st before this 10-game winning streak. During this 10-game winning streak, it was at 35. Or it's at 35.1%, which is number 1 in the NBA. So their offensive rebounding has been way, way better. And then defensive rating, that was at 22nd. That's moved to 13th. And then we've seen their overall net rating go from bottom 6 in the NBA to top 10. So there's just been, when we talk about how drastic the difference has been, it's been drastic. Like it's been a huge swing in how well this team is performing. So I've been impressed. And again, the reasoning though goes back to it's just quicker decisions. It's trusting each other, and that's been pretty. It's been way more fun to watch. That's for sure. I've had a way more enjoyable time watching each of these games. Right, Matt?
Yeah, it's not depressing anymore. It's not a chore anymore. It's actually fun to tune into Bulls games now and watch them.
Yeah, and I think DeMar deserves a big shout out for some of this recent play. I think we talk a lot about the young guys, and we should, because in the grand scheme of things and in the future, that's what's going to matter most. But DeMar, what he's been able to do in fitting into and adjusting his game to fit how clearly this team wants to play and to bring the best out of the young guys shouldn't be overlooked. Last night he finished with 9 assists to go along with his 27 points. He was a plus 17. He also had 7 rebounds. Shot 12 of 16 from the field. So while he picked apart the Lakers in that second half and did what he does at the end of the game and definitely did DeMar stuff, the passing though has been something that we've seen come to life a little bit more, which is part of his game that he added when he was in San Antonio and playing with Greg Popovich. He said, I don't remember exactly in what interview this was, but when he joined the Bulls, he said that Pop basically told him, you're going to be you're going to be the point guard. And he was confused. He was unexpected. That's not the role he played in Toronto. And, but he played that role for basically his 3 seasons in San Antonio as that point forward. So we've seen him kind of go back to that during this 10-game win streak. He's had 3 games with double-digit assists. And then last night, like we said, he almost reached that with 9. He's had at least 5 assists in what it looks like, I don't know, like 6 of the past 7 games or so. It's just definitely the effort and focus that he's putting into setting up his teammates is different than it had been earlier in the year and last year. And I think I tip my cap to him, because yes, Coby's playing super well. Yes, Patrick Williams is finally coming into his own offensively. Ayo's taken a step back in the right direction. But you need those smart players, and Vucevic deserves some respect for this too.
For sure.
You do need those smart veterans on the floor to help you, play the way you want to play, and also make sure the wheels don't completely fall off when these young guys are out there. And I think that's a lot of what we've seen. It's way more, I think we talked about this last show, right? It's like way more complimentary from these star players and bringing out the best from their teammates, which isn't necessarily something that we'd seen the past couple of years.
No, we really had not seen any of that, I feel like, the last couple of years.
I think there was just way more focus on how can I, even though it didn't work, I do think everyone was trying to make the big 3 work, right?
Yes.
It was, that's where the focus was.
Everybody was trying to, whatever they did was, working towards maximizing the big three's output, which I'm sorry, when the big 3 is those 3, that doesn't really work. When the big 3 is LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, that can work. But when it's those 3, they're not good enough for that to work. And that's no shot on them. They're not that good of a big 3.
Right. So it's going to be, I'm interested now as we move forward, into this, the next game they play tonight. We're recording this on a Thursday. They play the Spurs. So if you're listening to this after, Maybe they lost to a just very bad Spurs team, and
Very possible.
and all this
Very
optimism
possible.
is because in that first game too, they were down 10 at like halftime. So let's not
Yeah.
forget they played the Spurs last week or 2 weeks ago, and it didn't go too well. But regardless, there's some stuff here to be encouraged about, and I'm curious to see if they can keep it up. I think what we talked about at the beginning of the show, it's definitely been the most consistent they've played. I think that this is sustainable to an extent. Maybe they won't be beating Philly and LA every chance they get, but the
Or
way
will
they're
they?
playing, or will
Think about it.
maybe. So they play Philly like twice coming up here at the beginning of January, so that'll be another test. I think it's another mini series actually, but we'll keep an eye out. I'm encouraged. I'm at least happy that we had one fun, optimistic podcast, and I look
It's nice
forward
for a
to
change.
I look forward to hopefully having another soon. So I think that's where we're going to wrap things up for this episode. We will be back probably next week. I think we could probably squeeze one in unless
Yeah.
we're like
I think we should.
yeah, I think we can squeeze one in before the new year, and maybe we can give some superlatives, maybe some Chicago Bulls superlatives for the 2023 calendar year. So we're gonna come back to you then. Thank you all for listening, and enjoy the Bulls. Do it right now. Just enjoy yourself.
It'll be fun.